Hello, and welcome to another edition of Between Two Nuts. Today we are talking to Sno Dub, Music and Entertainment, also known as Sno Dub. And thank you so much for coming on and hanging out with me tonight.
Oh yeah, no, this ought to be a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. But I'm really, really grateful that you're able to come on. I know things have been very busy for you there, and real life has a tendency to kind of blend. So,
Of course, yeah.
but for those of you for the audience members who may not know you very well, can you please go ahead and tell them a little bit about yourself and your content and what you're up to?
Yeah, well, I'm Soda Music and Entertainment. I do, I'm pretty casual as far as I do your occasional movie reviews and sometimes some hot topics, which I call Jolly's Rants. My main source of entertainment is two different things, actually. We have our music, which I've created and paid for, produced, engineered all my own music. So I don't get any YouTube strikes on mine. And then yeah, right. And then I got my puppet Jolly, a conservative puppet, who I also use for a lot of different things. Especially the co-host of the Ribbit and Bigot show, which is now the Ribbit and Bigot and Blonde show,
Mm-hmm.
because we've incorporated Meg's, which she was kind of already a co-host anyway, so
Right.
we just figured might as well make her a permanent setting.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I like that. I like the show a lot. I think I enjoy it because I like the banter. I do, and the humor. So if anybody has a chance, you should definitely check it out. I enjoy the videos. I'll try to hop in. I may not be able to at the time, but I always go back, and I think that's the best part about the streams is I can go back and watch them if I missed a show or all that kind
yeah.
of stuff. Because
Well, we do that on purpose to keep it just an hour long every time we do the show because half of our audience always comes back to watch it later. So, we kind of go in with that mindset that this is, like a weekly show that people want to, come back and tune in and laugh. And we do a lot of improv, in case you didn't notice.
hmm
So,
I
but it
think
works well.
I think the humor with improv is like to me that's a lot more appreciated to me. Like
Yeah,
yeah, it's like when I was very young. I don't know. Did you ever take theater or anything when you were in school?
of course. Yeah, I was in drama class. I got the lead part. Um, what year was that? I want to say seventh or eighth grade.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I got the lead part in a play, I remember. And of course, it was kind of a role where I was pretty much playing myself, which was a class clown, so to speak. But it had some singing in it too, which was
Mhm.
fun, different, and as high school progressed, I got more into art and drawing and stuff like that.
Okay.
In high school, yeah,
Kind of like the creative mind, basically. You got to keep
yeah.
going.
But the drama was always there. I always had a love for that too. But I
Mhm.
didn't. I just should have exploited it more in high school, and I didn't.
I know. You kind of look back on things like that, and you're like, oh
Yeah,
well. You know,
yeah. Well, it's
it
whatever you were into at the time.
exactly. Well, that's. I think it's fun to go like look back on certain things that we were doing in high school and middle school and go, oh well, that makes sense. I understand why I didn't do this, but I have small regrets, but at the same time, I don't because I really hated high school.
Yeah.
So,
I got a love hate relationship with high school. Love hate.
right, yeah, yeah, big time. Especially with I don't know. It's like like we had our quote high school reunion recently, and I didn't go. I was like, I don't really need this because
No, I haven't gone to one yet. I
I
missed
have.
two.
Yes, me too. I'm like, I don't have a need for this. I didn't like your asses in high school. Like
Right. Yeah. Pretty much. Right.
you know, there's like
I was
certain
like,
people I talk
yeah,
to.
like three people you want to see out of the whole class, and the rest of them are like,
Exactly.
yeah, not really.
Right. Like I either that or I still talk to them. Maybe like I stay in touch with them either on social media in some way. I
Right.
I don't need to see a good portion of these people like at all. Like I'm like, you were an asshole then. You probably still are. Like I don't want
Well,
to.
the high school reunion is a sign of the times because we're living in a time now where it's not as necessary. Back in the day when we didn't have social media, it was a
Right.
big, a big shocker to see these people you hadn't seen in 10 years and heard of. But now you just look them up on Facebook.
Exactly. And you're like, oh shit, there's that person. Oh, there's that
Oh,
person.
yeah, they didn't age well. Ooh,
Yeah, oh,
yeah,
now I'm serious. That's a good point. Like I've looked at some friends that I knew. Nah, I'm not saying any. There's a lot of people I knew who look fantastic, of course, blah blah blah.
right.
But there are some people I'm like, what happened? Like what happened? Like what
Yeah.
happened between high school and now that you look 80? Like how did this happen? You know?
I blame usually alcohol or some hard drugs usually
Yeah.
get involved. Yeah,
Oh, absolutely. Like
not always, but usually.
right, it's true. But it is weird to see people that I haven't seen in a long time again. I have a friend that's going to be coming out to Texas and like the spring and I've known her since God forever. And we're going to meet up there and she has 3 kids and I'm going to bring the squirrels with me and it's going to be chaos and I feel bad for whatever restaurant we're in. But
Oh wow.
yeah, mazel tov to them. But like, you know, but I mean, it's weird. It's like so strange to see her older now and myself older, I guess. And you know what I mean? It's like kind of
Yeah,
like time travel. And I mean, when was the last time you reconnected with somebody that from I don't know high school that you haven't seen in a while?
that's funny you mentioned that. One of my closest friends in high school, I have not seen him personally in
Mm.
almost 20 years now. Um, the funny thing is he actually we kind of went on two different paths. His was unfortunately a lot more involved with the law and getting in trouble, and so he did
Oh,
some time.
right.
And he just recently got out, and I'm trying to set up a time to go up and see him. We've reconnected and everything now that he's out, and he's one of those guys that found God or whatever. I don't know if prison just does that to you, but um, I really want to see him, because we
Yeah.
were really close when we were
Mhm.
younger, and I've seen pictures and stuff, and it's like it's going to be a trip, to see him again after all these years. So yeah,
Oh,
there's a 20-year gap there. That's going to be a kind of a shocker.
yeah. And in a sense too, it'll be good for him to see you because it's kind of like it's support in the
Right.
end for the path that he's going. It's a whole new path for him in a positive way and
Yep.
rebuilding a life again, like making it his own and nobody else's. And that's not easy. I had a friend that she got into a whole lot of trouble and she was not in well she went to Tent City up in Phoenix.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
And
they're wearing pink jumpsuits.
yes, and she was in those like tents and the whole night, and she was on work release, but at the time it was like she was really restricted. I couldn't see her. Nobody could see her. It was like one of those. And so I did reconnect with her like right after she was officially everything was good and she had gotten herself into a program. I was her like sponsor, so I went with her when she had her for NNA for Narcotics Anonymous and stuff. And it was a hard road for her, but it helps so much to have friends and support there, even if it's just to see someone. It's such a
Yeah.
meaningful thing because it's just to let them know, hey, you're still a good person to me. I know things have been rough. It'll get better. It's gonna
Right.
it's gonna be okay. You are still you are a better person. You know what I mean? It's just that little
Yeah.
reminder. But there's a lot of I think there's a lot of good in people. I do. Even the biggest assholes have a little bit of good in them, but it's
Somewhere.
just yeah, it's it's deep in there, but they have it somewhere in there, and at some point in their life they decide to be a bad person. You know what I mean? The assholes specifically.
Right.
But I do think everyone has some good in them. It's just a question of like how deep is it and how suppressed is it. And I think there's a lot of reachable people, and I think there's a lot of people who just don't want to be reached. I think it's a decision, you know.
I
But
agree.
you know, now are you originally? I don't know if you want to discuss the states that you. Where are you originally from?
Oh, no, I don't have any problem with that. I was born in Seattle, Washington.
Oh, okay.
And let's see, I grew up around that area. There's a bunch of different, like, smaller cities. People, if they're not from there, you say Seattle, they just basically think it's all the same
Mhm.
city.
Mhm.
So I lived in a city called Everett and Smoky Point for a few years of my childhood. And then when I got into high school, I started kind of getting into the bad crowd a little bit, and so I decided to move to the other side of the mountains. The Cascade Mountains there
Oh,
kind of splits the state in half,
right.
and I moved to the other side, the east side of the state, and that's where I went to high school. I went to a small town called Cashmere, Washington. It's pushed right up against the Cascade Mountain Range there.
Oh,
Beautiful
wow.
country. Rivers. They've got cold winters, hot summers. Apple capital of the world area,
Wow.
Wenatchee. Yeah, so a lot of apples are grown there. It was an interesting but fun area to grow up, especially for high school days. So yeah, so that's where I'm
Wow.
originally from. And then my mom's side of the family ended up migrating to Arizona to
Right.
business ventures,
Hmm.
and I ended up shifting focus at a point in my life and moving down to Arizona when I was about 21.
So, I mean, how do you like Arizona? And I guess in comparison to
Uh, when I
Washington.
first when I first moved here, I loved it
Hmm.
because it seemed very desolate, kind of old west feel.
Hmm.
The sunsets are amazing here.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
you'll you'll never see another sunset like you do in Arizona.
Hmm.
Um, Sunrises too. I mean, it's just gorgeous here. But the winter time here is probably one of the best places in the world to live. That's why we have a high population of what they call snowbirds.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
you know about those, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, People are only here half the year. The other half of the year it can be brutal.
Oh, yeah.
Brutal. Very.
That's a nice word for it. It's like that word just holds so much meaning, brutal. It really is bad. Oh my God. The
Yeah, it's peel your skin off your car seat bad. It's bad.
Oh yeah, you'll find the penny in the seat guaranteed. You're like, "Oh,
Uh,
a penny. I've always wanted to have myself a tattoo on the rear." You know?
don't dare leave your chapstick in your car,
Ugh.
during the day because there'll
Yeah.
be a pool wherever you left it. I mean, I think I'm getting to an age here pretty soon where I may end up going back home to Washington State. I've just been really hoping the politics would change a little bit up there first. So
Yeah. I agree. There's so
yeah,
much chaos. I don't know if that's going to clear up anytime soon, unfortunately. It's just
I know.
where everything's just pushed everywhere and it's so extreme. And although
Yep.
I've noticed that Portland has been getting a lot of the crazier pieces, like
Yes, yes, yeah. Portland's definitely the cesspool. So
good lord.
yeah, I stay away from that town.
Yeah, like I have not, unfortunately, I have not visited Washington State or Portland, um, Oregon. Um, Stayed mostly, you know, I guess in the Southwest and the East Coast areas. I'm more familiar with those areas and even the Midwest a bit, but I have not traveled that far up yet.
Mhm.
Um, I have friends up there and I have a little bit of family technically, but I'm like, so I have a hard time with elevation. So
Okay,
a little. I didn't know that until we moved to New Mexico because we lived there for 6 years, and I was like, "Yep, can't live here." It was just
right.
the elevation really made me sick. I was like, "Yeah, I need to be at sea level or below. Like I can't."
Oh, okay.
So like, if the meteor comes, maybe 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 I'll be able to live. But
Or maybe Yellowstone blows up.
oh, exactly, it'll all work out in the end there. But
Sure.
what is something special about the place that you grew up as a kid? Like it's something that
Uh,
sticks out for you.
well, I guess probably my most fondest memories, and if you're talking about
Yeah.
we're talking pre-puberty, right?
Mhm.
Um, my fondest memories are the ability to kind of run out into the forest and get lost. As in, you could go so deep in where anywhere you turned, you didn't see any houses, civilization, whatever.
Wow.
You were in the depths. Straight out of a book. Mad Squirrel would appreciate a place like that. Um, but yeah, it's beautiful. I can remember rope swings, tree house forts that we would
Oh,
build. I
that's
can
awesome.
remember, creeks and streams that we'd play in. Um, I can remember just laying down in a giant fern and it feeling like the most comfortable recliner in the forest, if that makes sense.
Wow, man.
Yeah, it's very, very fun childhood.
See that
having that luxury.
that would be amazing. I mean, I've talked about building forts with someone else, and I'm trying to remember which interview. I just spoke to someone about building tree forts. I think it was Stig, and just going
Mm,
and building forts. It was like such a big deal as a kid, making having a
yeah,
tree house or a playhouse, and having a huge forest like that would blow my mind because that's just endless. You could do so much. You're like,
right.
I mean, a lot of shenanigans too, but still, who cares? It's just that freedom to be in nature. I think is something that I do love. I do love nature in general. So it's like you do lose that sometimes when you move to cities, even small towns in some cases, depending on where you live. But Arizona is so much the opposite of where you came from, as far as
Yes, polar
green.
opposite.
Oh God! I mean,
Polar opposite.
Tucson is Arizona. Like, it's an amazing. I will say this: it's an amazing city. It's more of the liberal city of, I would say, of the state, at least from
Unfortunately.
back in the day. Things are changing so rapidly, but it's a very artistic and creative, and there's always something going on in Tucson. There's always, like, some of the more like difficult to. I know for me back before we lived there, more of the difficult to find bands would go down to Tucson. They wouldn't go to Phoenix, so
Right.
you'd have to go down to Tucson a lot of times for the ones that weren't necessarily
Yeah.
booked, in Phoenix, which was often. But it's a very creative place. There's a lot of art. There's a lot of music. There's a nice scene down there for that, but things have changed in the state dramatically. Um, I
Yeah.
don't know. It makes me sad because the state had a lot of good parts to it to a point. But
Mhm.
I'd seen everything Arizona had to offer in like the first 2 years I lived there. I was like, okay, I'm done. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, there's really
You
not
got
a
the
whole lot
tour.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say too the other thing Arizona, like in comparison to like New Mexico, is the lack of culture. Um, like
Right.
I really was kind of stunned by that. I was like, wow, there's not. It seemed like they drove all of it out when they colonized the state.
hmm They
It,
sure did. There's pockets still, of
yes.
small towns that are fun to go visit. There's one called Tubac,
Mm.
Tubac. It's a
Mhm.
little south of here towards the border more, but it's a completely artist town. I mean, the whole town is just nothing but artists live there.
That's
And all
so
the
cool.
shops there just sell art and clay pots and, ceramic stuff. And it's very cool. So there's still life left in Arizona. It's just unfortunately these populous cities,
Mhm.
much like California,
Mhm.
got taken over by certain politicians and politics and corrupted it a bit. And yeah, now to this day I have rainbow sidewalks, but I have potholes that'll tear your rim up, so it makes sense of that.
Right.
Taxpayer dollars hard at work.
It's it is such a met. I mean, Tucson's always kind of had that struggle to it because of the politics down there. Like the
Yeah,
funding was always off. Their crime was out of control for a period. I don't know how it is now, but it was
a
like,
little bit.
okay. I know
Not too
for
bad.
yeah, like
South
for
side, still south side.
okay, all right. I'm like, that's good. I was like, South Side, but yeah, that's gonna be that way. Um,
Yeah.
it's accepted. It's like,
We're
yeah.
we're still a college town though, too.
Oh
The
yeah,
University of Arizona is a big attraction here, so that's
yep.
what brings other people from other states.
Yep. And I mean, I loved going down. We go down to Tucson for a while. We go down at least once a month because of different stuff going on. Like, they had a lot of like festivals and like
Yeah.
when I was a kid, I grew up with like art shows. Like we used to go to art shows like because we lived in Miami, so it was like everywhere. So every weekend there was like a huge art show we could go to, and so
Cool.
it was amazing. And they'd have live music, and then they'd have like food. It was great. And like we moved to Arizona, there was none of that shit. So you had to travel down to Tucson, or hope you hit one maybe up in like Payson, or not Payson, I'm sorry, but Prescott, or one of those, occasional ones. But it was so
Mhm.
infested with yuppies that it wasn't really that cultural. It was, especially go to places like Sedona when like everyone was having a midlife crisis at one time back in the
Right.
90s.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of,
And Phoenix is nothing but a big smushed together LA again. It's just
oh,
a
yeah.
bunch of little cities crushed into one big city, and it's concrete jungle.
Yep.
I don't like going there very much, especially in the summertime.
Ugh.
The nighttime heat there can stay over 100 degrees during the
Mm-hmm.
summer. It's unbelievable. Too
Well,
hot.
yeah, my very well, my sister from another mister, if you will. She lives down in Yuma, and like I've gone down there a ton of times, but Lord, like it is hotter than hell. Like, during the summer, it's like 130,
Yeah.
125. I'm like, pfft. And then like one year it was really high. It was like pushing 140. It was bad. And the thing
Hmm.
I will say this, and this is an opinion, but from the time we moved there to where it is now, I feel like it's gotten tremendously more humid than
Yes, it's weird too because it's gotten more humid, but we've gotten less monsoons, which used to be
weird.
very prevalent when I first moved here. And now they're not as much as it used to be. Our monsoon season continues to shrink, it seems, but we
Wow.
keep the humidity. So the climate is changing here a little
Mm-hmm.
bit,
Yeah.
as it is all over the world. I ain't gonna deny that, but
Oh yeah.
climate's always been changing in this world. That's
Yeah.
part of what this world is. So
It's
people are climate change, climate change. Just wait till a super volcano pops, you assholes.
exactly.
Your climate change ain't gonna mean shit.
Well, and that, but I
Sorry. Oh, am I not supposed to cuss? I just forgot.
no, I have been cursing. It's fine. Don't even worry about it.
Okay. Yeah,
I,
I caught myself. My
yeah,
bad.
no, it's totally fine. No, it's the humidity. I was so shocked. We went down to Yuma. I was there for like over the summer because I obviously had a suicidal issue, but I went to go visit them and I had the kids and stuff. And I'm used to at night it's still 90 degrees. I'm used to that or 100. Um, but we were outside and I was smoking and I was like, God, I'm sweating. Like I'm
Yep.
really sweating, and I was like, "What the hell?" Like I don't remember sweating in Arizona for like shit 15 years I was there. I mean, it wasn't very common to like it's a dry heat. It's still
Yeah.
shit, people. It's an oven, but it was so humid, you know.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I had no idea it was that bad. And then when we were there, they were got a quote thunderstorm, and it was just the most. The humidity was probably only about 15 to 20% humidity, and that was enough to make me want to die. Like that's how
Yeah.
hot it was. I thought I've told this to other people. I'm like, dude, it has gotten way humid, more humid than it's I remember ever. Like it was just
Yep.
so hot, and it wasn't.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
And
And my the allergies have gotten worse down here
I was gonna
because
ask.
yeah, there's more pollen, more stuff starting to grow. The desert's looking a little more lush and green these days than it used to, so
Oh,
it's
that's
definitely
good.
there's definitely a shift going on. So
I
I think we are losing our desert slowly but surely.
I can agree with that too. Like when we drove
Yeah.
through there, I did notice more green. At first I thought it was just me. I thought, man, I don't remember seeing bushes like that before.
Right.
Like there's huge. I've driven all over that freaking state, so I'm used to seeing that up north, but not really down south. Not as
Yeah.
prevalent as it is now. But yeah, it's just a whole nother. The state has transformed significantly, and I'm supposed to. So we'll see. Next year, I'm supposed to go out down to Yuma, and also I'm gonna go to Phoenix and Chandler and all that shit. Do the tour, if you will,
Mm,
because but I have a friend that lives. One of my several of my best friends still live in like scattered throughout the East Valley area, and the crime is out of control. Like the stuff that's going on there in these areas, there was hard, and I've never heard of such crime, but a lot of it has to do with those damn prisons they opened up, bringing in all those
yeah.
inmates.
Yep.
Oh my god! And when we were driving through, we went like I forgot what damn road we run. Probably because there's too many freeways now that don't matter. But I feel like that's Arizona, but is freeways that don't matter. But like
Pretty much. Yeah.
there was this an exchange. We were heading in the direction of Chandler though, and they had like dozens and dozens of these huge maximum security prisons set up, and that was never there before. And I had heard about it, and I was like, this isn't good because Arizona made agreements with like California and a bunch of other states to bring all these inmates in, and when those inmates are getting out now, they're being released into the general population of Arizona,
Yeah.
and some of the most violent crimes, I mean, I've heard of, have been in like places I used to live that were very safe for many, many, many years, like 10 plus, for all the years I lived in those areas, they were safe as hell. And it blows my mind how bad it's gotten. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Um,
Yeah.
it's just a whole different place now. And it's like my friend and her husband, example, broad daylight. He went to go pick up pizza from like, I think it was like Domino's or something. Got out of the car in the parking lot, got held up by gunpoint in broad daylight in front of all these people. And the dude took his wallet, took, whatever he had, which was, nothing, thank God, really. and
Right.
tried to hijack the car. That didn't work, but the guy took off, and they never found him. But he was like, he had all the MS-13 crap all over him.
Uh,
And I was like, oh my God. And so, like, then in the same area, like where I used to live was a little further down from where she's at. There was a pretty brutal, this was several years ago, but this guy was trying to rob I think it was a Circle K, and he shot the kid point blank range in the face.
uh,
Was a 20 something year old kid, or no, 18, 20. Killed the kid, and then he led the police on a car chase from Mesa all the way into Phoenix for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, some crazy amount. And I'm like, why did he do it? Just because the kid, um, I can't remember what it was. He either was gonna he shot him because he didn't have money for cigarettes. I was like, what?
uh,
So
yeah,
it was
it's
just,
bad.
I mean, that's shit you hear about that in big cities like
Right.
Albuquerque. That's every day, you know. Um, but Phoenix, like it just kind of blew my mind. That just that Mesa, Phoenix, Chandler, Gilbert crap. All those things were going through that. I was like, really? Like it's turned into this? Like I'd be terrified to be, in a place that's flipped on a switch so quickly in those areas. Like my friends are moving out, like they're getting out of the areas now because they don't feel safe with their kids. They're like, I thought my kids would be able to play outside. Not anymore, you know?
Yeah, well, like I said, Phoenix is just compressed Los Angeles. It's basically becoming the same thing that LA used to be, as far as crime and stuff like that. Los Angeles has a whole different source of crime now. Theirs is more of a homeless epidemic, and the Black Plague starting to show up again. And
Mm,
but yeah, Phoenix is now taking in more of that crime, that used to look what LA used to look like in the '90s is now becoming Phoenix. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, gang activity, MS-13, all that garbage.
So,
So if
as you're, okay, this is kind of a general question in a sense, but like as you're getting older and as we get older in general, but what are you becoming more and more afraid of as you get older?
uh, well, I mean, fear. Uh,
It's a
I
tricky
think
question.
I automatically respond to that as a parent.
Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
think most people would, if they have kids. It was different, when you didn't have kids, obviously.
Mhm.
But of course, that was for me and a lot of other people. It's at an age where you feel like you're immortal, life's going to go on forever type of feel.
Right.
You start to realize that's not so much the case later on. But yeah, kids, once you have children, you become number two. You become second.
Right.
Their life becomes more important than yours. So the fear, and I think every true parent feels this, is their main fear is to outlive their child.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's the best one I can come up with as far as my top fear, and a lot of other people I think feel the same way.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think the most tragic thing is that, and um because by nature, you should have your children still there to kind of carry on and it kind of like it reminds me of like how do you put this? My greatest fear like changed over time. Of course, the outliving. You want your children to outlive you. But one of the things I was worried about for a while, because like in my family, like most of my family passed when I was by the time I was 30. You know, because age gaps, because people decide to have kids late in life. Um, so it's not like we're seeing that in current times by any means. Anyway, so
Becoming more common, that's for sure.
it's yeah, and my advice is, and this is coming from somebody who, is left behind, um, is if you're going to have children late in life, I don't care if you're 40, I don't care if you're 45, have more than one, so that way
Right.
they can be there for one another when times are tough. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care if people want to have children late in life. You just make sure that your children have support, meaning they have each other. Not finances don't mean shit if they don't have anybody to be there with them.
Right.
It's different. And try to surround your children with, you know, some family, grandparents, things like that. Now that's something I've talked to other people about. But were your grandparents active in your life when you were little, or is it something that they were here and there, or did?
Actually, that's funny you mentioned that. I still have a grandmother to this day that I'm, quite active in my life.
Mm,
She's almost about to turn 90 years old.
oh, congrats to grandma.
Yeah, she's definitely filling her age. There's Alzheimer's, other, a couple other things,
Oh,
symptoms starting to seep in. I mean, it's gonna happen,
yeah.
when you hit the 90 mark. But we're dealing with that. My sister Megs, who has her own channel, and
Mm-hmm.
and she's in the Jolly and Meg show. She takes care of her on a full-time basis. She
Oh, good.
lives in her house, and then I go over there, on occasion to kind of keep the peace and helps do stuff or whatever needs to be done around the house and stuff like that, and visit and hang out. Um, but it's gotten tougher, through the years, especially with grandma.
Mm-hmm.
And then my grandparents, she just lost my grandfather a couple of years ago, so he made
Oh,
it to
wow.
92.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And unfortunately he broke his hip, so he might have
Oh,
went longer if didn't have done, that wouldn't happen. But
yeah.
the other side, my father's side, that's the one that hurts the most because those two, one, my grandfather was a World War II vet. He did two tours, one in Africa, one in the Battle of the Bulge. Saw some amazing but devastating things over there. Stories that died with him that I wish I could have heard.
Mm,
He passed when I was 14, and he became a full-blown hardcore alcoholic after the war.
yeah.
Had night terrors, all that stuff. So, fortunately, the war killed him. It just took a lot longer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Um, and then my grandma, also on my dad's side, I was very close to as a child, and I lost her when I was only 19. So,
Mm,
yeah, grandparents were quite important for me growing up, in a lot of different ways. And that's just crazy. I still have one left. She's still kicking.
well, kudos for having grandma still because it is a gift. Like it
Yeah,
really is a gift, and I don't think it's sad because there's so many people that families are dysfunctional. That's what families are. No one is perfect. There's crazy shit in everybody's tree. Um, and things happen sometimes in families that make it difficult, to have the grandparents in the kids' lives, or maybe I know some people that never knew their grandparents, and it makes me sad for them because they missed that opportunity, to have that because they are very. And my grandparents were. I always talk about them because that's they're a big part of my life. They were, but they were highly influential. They were the ones that kind of like they were the second parent you could kind of go to, even if it's for just like that piece of oddball advice that you're like, what the fuck,
yeah,
and then it comes full circle, and you're like, oh, okay, that's what she meant.
different different generation too. Yeah,
Absolutely, and what a gift though to have her still. I know that she's Alzheimer's and things like that is not. My grandfather had it, and it was tragic in a lot of ways. But
right.
at the same time, it's like you're glad that you have them, but it's very mixed. When you're a caregiver, it's a mixed feeling. Like you're between being fed up, um, because there's shit going on, and
Yep.
like when I worked in hospice, one of my jobs is I'd go and I was a volunteer for a while, and I would go and relieve the caregivers so they could go do whatever they needed to do, and I'd hang out with that person, for X amount of time, just so they had mental time. You know what I
Right.
mean? Because it's a lot, it's a lot to be a caregiver. So my heart does go out to your sister on that, because it's not like it's a labor of love by every sense of the word. But
Oh yeah, she's gone rounds with grandma. She's wanted to move out on a couple occasions. Trust me. It's
oh, I and it
yeah.
and it's hard because like they can't help themselves. Like
Right.
grandfather did a lot of shenanigans when he started to get Alzheimer's, and sometimes he would lie about forgetting. And there was, and honestly, like, I believe everything in this life happens for a reason. So, like, all these things, whatever hardships go on with grandma, whether it's in the past or currently with her illnesses or bad days versus good days, like, yeah, I believe it always prepares us for things in life. We just don't see it right away. But, like, my grandfather, I was 16. My grandfather passed in 2002. He was 92. And
Oh wow.
yeah, that's the age gap. But
Yeah.
he was a World War II guy. He wasn't deployed. My grandmother was the one deployed, and she died in 2004. She was 88. So,
Mm,
um, she was in the military. He was in the military, and the blue collar straight up for him. She was an RN, head nurse of she. During the war, she was head nurse and like an officer and all this crap, and not someone to fuck with by any means. And
yeah.
my grandfather was like, he is more like, he got along with everyone, but he was very blue collar, very hard worker, and he was an immigrant. His family were immigrants. So anyway, but he saw the world. He was very much like, I'm just gonna go build a house. He was that guy. I'm sure you had someone
Yeah.
in your family. I was like, I'm gonna go build this house. You're like, do you know how to? They're like, I already know. I used to build this and that. You're like, what the
Right.
fuck?
Yeah. That was that generation.
Oh,
They
absolutely.
passed on trades to each other and stuff. Yeah.
And it wasn't so much like, oh, I'm going to go to school for this. It was like, no, just go be with, uncle or your dad or whoever, and you would just
Right.
learn. But when he got Alzheimer's, though, it's like everything kind of just declined. And he did a lot of shit. Like, he would be sneaky and do a lot of like stealing money because he was hiding money in the house because he went through the depression. So like,
Right.
he had dropped out of school during the depression and stuff to help his family because there was a lot of kids. And so he would hide money in our house all the time. And he had a huge disdain for not Teddy, I'm sorry, the other Roosevelt. Um,
Oh,
my brain just took a vacation. Um, but
I know. Yeah.
Mr. New Deal, and he despised him. He said he was a thief, and because they confiscated wealth like a little bit during
Right.
it to recover, and so my grandfather was hiding money all over our house,
Yeah.
um, like silver and stuff. And I was like, "What are you doing?" And he'd go and take money out of purses and wallets, and he'd get himself turned around. But he would have episodes where he'd kind of go back in time. So he would be 18, on 19. I would have to address him by his name and stuff like that. And he would also
Yeah.
sneak out of the house. Um,
Oh wow.
so we had to get bolt locks and keep an
Uh,
eye on him because he took off. And like it happened and this is back a while ago. And we were living in Arizona. We had moved them with us when we moved from the East Coast. And uh it's a short story, but he snuck out the first time. I had to have the neighbors found him. How they found him was is that he came and had dinner with them. They fed him, and then they called the cops because they didn't know they didn't know who he was. He just went. He went in, had dinner with them, and they thought he was a sweet old man. I mean, he had a hat
right.
on that said "I love polka." Like they weren't gonna do anything to him.
Jesus.
So they called the cops. We went and got him, and very apologetic. Talked to the police. All this stuff. Well, then we got the house set up, and then one day I was at home. This is the third time he snuck out. I'm just skipping ahead a bit, but the third time he snuck out, I couldn't figure out how the hell he got out. The cops just brought him to my house, like they already knew, because my grandfather was like super nice. He loved officers because he was a fireman, so it's like the uniform is what did it for him. And I mean, he'd come out of it a little bit, and the fog, I guess, but I couldn't figure out how the hell he got out. And I asked the officer, I'm like, can you help me figure out how he got out? Because we have everything secured. He didn't go out through the garage because that was also secured in there. He had taken, the night before, he had helped my mom take the garbage out. He took the garbage can, those big black, garbage cans they have now. We all have them. He took it and shoved it against the back fence. What he did is he jumped over the fence. He got one of the,
Oh,
he got a
jeez.
chair, shoved it against, and hopped the fence. And that's how, and then he landed on top of the garbage can and then went for a walk. So that seemed poetic. But he would do stuff like that all the time. And it got to a point where it was so difficult to keep him at home. And they put him on Paxil when he was going, and this is the worst thing, because they don't have treatments for Alzheimer's that work, in my opinion. It's all just what they're doing is they're throwing antidepressants at them, saying this might work,
Right.
and so they put him on Paxil, and he got violent, and
Mm,
it got really bad. So we had to have him placed and to get him evaluated to try to figure out what we could do, and he was violent with everybody. And so he ended up being placed in a facility, which was terrible, but it was for his own safety. And
yeah.
very determined old man. And he was an itty bitty little man too. But it's Alzheimer's it does take a lot it takes a lot on a family. I think it's a lot of stress. It does add up. And like when he finally did pass, it was a mixed thing. There was a lot of regret and sadness for what he went through, but there was a lot of relief too because he wasn't suffering. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely. And my grandmother, she's got a walker, so she wouldn't get too far. And she's just now starting to show like the beginning signs of it.
Oh,
So I don't know if we'll see a bad progression before she, who knows.
right.
Um, but like I said, she's at a point now where she's in bed most of the day and just watches her Golden Girls or Frasier and very, very simple life at this point.
That's
And
good.
yeah, the walker, you can hear her coming a mile away with that walker.
Oh,
It's,
thank God.
so we know we won't lose track of her, even if she did kind of forget where she was at. Wouldn't take long to find her.
What would be, what would be a lesson that you learned from your grandparents that you still kind of carry with you today? Whatever that is.
Uh, uh, one of my favorite quotes, my grandma that's still alive today, she doesn't say it anymore, but she used to, was kill them with kindness.
Yeah.
That was always a great quote that I kind of held on to. I don't always use it, but sometimes, maybe not so much in YouTube, but I definitely like to try and use it in real life, especially with like business, when I'm, at work and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, it can go a long way.
Yeah.
Let's see, what other good quotes? I'm sure I heard quite a few from my grandmother on my dad's side because she was raised Southern.
Mm.
They're from the South, Louisiana.
Mm. Okay.
So there was a lot of she always had a lot of funny little quips, throughout the years. Hell of a cook too, man. That woman can cook. Fortunately, that's what took her, So lots of salt, lots of butter.
Right. A
But
southern diet. Yep.
yeah, um, yeah. But when I think about it, same thing. I lost my other two grandparents too young for me to really get into a nice, long, good conversation with them.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I was still, kind of a kid.
Right.
Uh, but my other grandparents, they like you were saying, were lived through the Depression, so they were very close to the hip.
Mhm.
Cheap, didn't want to spend nothing. Christmas presents were always kind of lame, to be honest. So,
Yeah, it's interesting like little things about our family. Like where did you get your love for music? When did that start for you?
Well, I've always been a huge fan of music. Um, I guess okay, to pinpoint the original source, we're gonna have to probably go to my old man's record player.
Oh.
And
Mm.
yeah, this is growing up, and I'm
That's
going
some
way back.
70s? No.
A lot of the music playing was.
Mhm.
Um,
Yep.
I was born in '78, so he was a blues lover, classic rock. Wasn't too much into that disco stuff,
Yeah.
but it was around. The pop era was really starting to take over as a
Mhm.
kid. Stuff like Cyndi Lauper and Billy Joel, and of course, the king of pop, Michael.
Mhm.
So the record player was out every weekend. That was kind of a thing as a kid, where the old man got to be, Friday, Saturday night. The beers come out, barbecue or dinner or whatever, And once a few beers got in the old man, it was record player time. And, he had
Right.
a big old chest full of, hundreds of records. And, a lot of it I couldn't stand. Obviously, it's a different
Yeah.
generation coming up, but some of it I loved. And I noticed at a very young age, one of the albums that stuck out in my mind that I would go to, a couple of them. One was Thelma Houston, and a lot of people don't know who that is, probably because she was little pre-disco, kind of that era. Um, Another one that would most people would recognize would be Cool in the Gang,
Oh, okay. Mhm.
and that was Ladies Night, and stuff like that. These are albums I can remember physically having my father put on and play for me. So I knew at a very young age I had a love for kind of a funky, upbeat tempo music for sure. And then my generation really started kind of growing into the hair band, the heavy metal. Um, Motley Crue was real popular. Warren,
Mhm.
Dokken. Of course, it kind of molded into Guns N' Roses came out of nowhere and really took over.
Oh yeah.
Um, Very popular stuff when I was, growing up, and I started kind of veering that way because it was more of a trend, with the kids that I hung out with.
Yep.
Then I discovered Mr. Eazy-E.
Oh God, that is a doorway. It really is.
And everything changed after that.
Oh, without a
I
doubt.
thought I found and to this day, I still, worship that guy and what he did. Big fan of Easy, and that completely flipped my style. I went from Guns N' Roses, a little bit of Prince. I was definitely in the rock age, and I flipped overnight. And next thing I know, I had Eazy-E and NWA. Now, granted, before that, I was a huge Michael Jackson fan, which everybody was,
Yeah.
growing up. It was just, you were, that's just what it was. Um, you were uncool if you were not a Michael Jackson fan, in
Yeah.
fact.
It's true.
Um, so he was always there, and always an influence. But yeah, the hip hop craze took over. So my very young preteen, teenage years was the gangster rap revolution, of NWA, Fuck the Police, Straight Outta Compton.
Mhm.
All that stuff was just starting to surge out. And, if you look at musical history, there was a literal hostile takeover of music in general when hip hop kind of came the pronounced go-to stuff, for
Yep.
clubs, music, radio, everything. It was everywhere.
East. It was like East versus West then between
Yeah,
the music too. I remember that because we were on the East side, so everything was coming off the West side. It was like this battling. You know what I mean?
right.
And that was awesome. I was like, this is the best thing ever.
It was intense,
It
and
was.
I loved it growing up. And at the exact same time as all this stuff was evolving, here comes out of left field this band called Nirvana from literally right down the street of where I was born. And that whole wave started coming in at the exact same time. So I
Mhm.
had these two different cultures around me during high school that was just insane. And now looking back at it, realizing how prevalent both those sounds were coming out of that generation.
Yeah, it's true. I remember when Nirvana started out because I was into Primus and I liked metal. I liked the Ozzy stuff and I,
Mhm.
I liked a lot of the experimental. When they started coming out with trip hop, I was sold. I was like, okay. Like I found this
Oh,
genre.
Tool came out. When Tool came out,
Yeah.
I was blown away by that band.
And like Nine Inch Nails is another one I like. Yeah, I
Oh
like
yes.
I like
Oh God, I love Nitrous Nails. Okay, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it's like
I still love Trent Reznor. I still
yes.
to this day.
And
Yes.
even if he's sober, I still love the music. It's still good,
Right.
Like I'm okay with it.
Oh, with Teeth is my favorite album. It
Oh
was
yeah,
Pretty Hate Machine for the longest time, but now it's with Teeth.
yeah, and it's yeah. Like there was Year Zero was really good.
Yes.
I really enjoyed it. It was back to the sound because it sound for a little while there he wasn't. It was like that. There was a couple
Hmm.
albums there was like okay, but it's like he found his beat. It was like they had to get right back on track, and I felt like Year
Hmm.
Zero, and then you got everything that came after. I was like, okay, this is
Was Year Zero was the one right after with Teeth?
yeah, mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, because I with
That's
Teeth
where he
was
started coming into his own again. Yeah.
exactly like with Teeth you could feel it. You're like, come back, like
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
and then with Year Zero, I was like, okay, he's back. Like
Yep.
I feel safe again. All right, we're good.
Yep.
But yeah, those
I
bands are
love
so
Zero Zero
tremendous.
too. Yeah, I'm a little more partial to With Teeth, but
Yeah.
there's a couple songs there where the lyrics really hit me. I think is why, because the sound's amazing on both those albums,
Oh
but
yeah.
the lyrics in With Teeth they hit me at a crucial time in my life. So it was I think they became more substantial.
Yeah. And that was the thing about Nine Inch Nails for me. On like, I think that's why Year Zero stuck with me was because there were certain tracks there like that really struck a nerve, and I would go back to it repeatedly. Like,
Hmm.
but yeah, I loved a lot of. I like Ministry also, so like, I like that. I like the bit of the industrial sound to
Mm.
rock, and I think that's what I really loved the most about it, because coming out of more of the theme and anthem rock, which was like, God, we got out of that.
Oh yeah,
Because that was annoying. That
it was
stadium shit.
a little bit.
It was just too much. It was too much. I was like, this is a little too much for me to handle. But coming into more of a produced sound and something that was more like, I don't know, individual. You can hear a Nine Inch Nails song and know it's Nine Inch Nails. That's I like to know. Oh, this is their beat. This is where they're coming from. So I'm sorry, I got off track there, but but
Oh, we could we could do an hour just on Nine Inch Nails if you want. I
I
mean,
know.
one of my favorites of all time. So
Oh
yeah.
man, it's yeah. I like it. Yeah, yeah. I could totally go down this road. Like,
Right.
Calm Squirrel. Calm Squirrel is a fan more of like the death metal,
Okay.
European stuff. So
Sure.
like, I mean, I don't hoblo a lot of that. But he loves it, and he collects a lot of the classics and stuff like. But he has so many albums, I don't even know who the hell he listens to, right? So like,
Right.
he goes on these tangents, and I'm like, you've lost me. It's cool.
Yep. Yep. Well, yeah.
So
Yep.
what would you say then, like with all of that stuff going on in high school, when you have, because I remember when the hip hop scene blew up, because it was that, the NWA, and then it was the East Coast versus West Coast stuff, and you know um, that went on for a while. But when you're in that environment where they called it alternative rock, which is very annoying.
Oh yeah, that's
Um,
right. I forgot they called it that. Alternative. Yeah.
And then they said they were gonna,
Yes.
like, MTV retired it, because we need to get rid of that. That's an old
Well,
phrase.
they finally called it grunge, which I still prefer that
Yeah,
name for it.
and it
Yeah.
is. It's kind of like that, came out of that fluff, of
Right.
the old metal into a more, I guess, progressive
Hmm.
rock, which is what we needed anyway. But um, with those dueling comparisons, though, when you're in high school, how did that influence, I guess, when you started moving forward in the direction with music? Like, what got you to the point where you're like, you know what, I'm gonna do this. This is something I want to do.
Oh. Well, that's the thing. It was always kind of there. Like
Mm-hmm.
earlier, we were talking a little bit about how I was in drama for a
Right.
while, and it
Mm-hmm.
was a musical, so I actually did some singing. And that was in I think seventh grade, I think
Okay.
seventh or eighth. So I was really young, still kind of figuring out who I was. I was always an artist at a very young age, drawing. So I was really good with a pencil. As I got older, I thought that was in high school. I thought that's what I was going to do as a career path. I thought I was going to be an artist, comic
Mm-hmm.
book artist, something like that.
Yep.
I have a very comic book style. Um, that tapered off, but I guess I go back and I think to a time I remember being on the school bus and I was already kind of dabbling around in writing. I was starting to write, short stories at about at 12, 13, and poetry a little bit, mostly just kind of funny, dirty nursery rhyme type of things.
Right.
Um, and I remember specifically, and I actually have a couple friends that can. actually condone this and say that they're there. But it was on a school bus. We hated our bus driver, and I can remember I made a song about her. I remember her name, Miss Pepper, and I can't tell you the lyrics to this day anymore. But I just remember it was a catchy little nursery rhyme, kind of making fun of her.
Right.
And at a point, I finally had like the whole bus singing it. Um, and all the kids on the bus, it was like a routine thing to sing this little nursery rhyme at the bus ride. She'd fucking turn around, shut up. Um, and I think back to those days, and I wrote a couple more songs, of just funny stuff. It was always humorous.
Hmm.
I would parody songs, like I made a parody of "Do the Bartman." I remember of some other,
Oh
version.
God.
Yeah, it just tells you the time period. So it was always kind of there. Short stories, drawing, I have a very artistic mind. And then, high school, I got into the hip hop scene, started loving hip hop music. And shortly after high school, it didn't happen in high school because I
Hmm.
was really into the art at that point.
Hmm.
Shortly after high school, I became a college dropout. uh,
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. Uh, Went in for a few months. Said, "That's ain't for me right now. I want to go party for a while."
Right. Yep.
Like I just went through 16 years of school or whatever. I need a break.
Yeah.
Um, so I got into hanging out with my buddies again, and started doing a little bit of slinging the marijuana, which is now a legal thing in Washington State, but back then it wasn't. Um, and we were doing house parties and stuff. And one of my best friend's brother came over from Seattle because I was living in Kashmir at the time, the,
Hmm.
the opposite side of the mountains there. He came over from Seattle and he was telling everybody about these wild parties he was doing where they were doing freestyles, freestyle rapping.
Oh, that's cool.
And
Hmm.
I'm all, what's this freestyle thing? What are you talking about? And so what it was they were taking instrumentals. And during this time period, this is, mid late 90s. So everybody was buying singles, CDs, that
Right.
would usually have like your hit track, and then you would have like an acapella and an instrumental on the CD. And what we would do is we put the instrumentals in at these house parties and pop it into like a karaoke type machine with a microphone. If you're really hype, you might have two mics,
Right.
and just a home stereo type of deal and a house party. And we pass the mic around while we played these instrumentals, and just off the top of the biscuit, you just whatever you could think of, you just start rapping, and if you kind of funked up your flow and kind of fell off, you just pass the mic, let somebody else take over.
Right.
And I did that for it felt like probably at least a couple of years, where we just hopped around party to party, just kind of living the life. I was almost 21 at the time, so it's kind of cruising towards that alcohol age.
Right. Hmm.
And me and a couple other buddies kind of started getting a little more serious, started recording some stuff. Never original music, just us rapping over other people's instrumentals, basically.
Right.
And it caught on. It caught on. It got to a point at these house parties where I'd have hundreds of people in the house, packed to the walls, just craziness. Um, and people, chanting my name to come up to the mic and, bust a rap. And that's when I first kind of realized that I had something. I had a cadence or an
Hmm.
allure to my audience that I could possibly tap into. And we never, unfortunately, back then took it serious enough,
Right.
which I wish we would have, because that time, oh,
Oh yeah.
hindsight. But
Hmm.
you're young, dumb, just want to party, chasing tail. So chasing squirrel. What else? Yeah. So we try to make a couple of, they were cheesy, low production karaoke type, mixtapes.
Hmm.
And we'd make copies of them and pass them around locally. Got a
Hey,
little bit of a name. Yeah,
that's how so a lot of people get started is just having those tapes floating
yeah,
around.
yeah. And we made an attempt, and we it never just went anywhere because the passion was never there fully from all people involved with the group. There was four of us that were pretty dedicated to it, and as the time progressed, all of them except for me all of them got into harder drugs. And
Uh,
that whole time period of when my friends started veering that way, because up to that point I was, a smoker, smoke some weed, drink some beer, but I was cool. That was it. That's all I
right.
needed.
Right.
And then the hard shit started showing up. And, that's when personality started changing. That's when people started getting broke and started robbing and stealing,
Yep.
and a whole other, priority list came up besides making music. So unfortunately, it got the back shelf for about 10 years where I really just didn't mess with it that much. I'd maybe play around here and there, do a little freestyle once in a while, but it was once my crew, so to speak, kind of fell off, I didn't pursue it as a solo artist, at least not yet. And
Right.
then and then that changed when I actually hit my early 30s when I actually started taking it serious again.
And sometimes you have to kind of go through a bit of like a cycle, meaning you kind of have to like get rid of, like unfortunately the drugs and the stuff coming into play on certain things. It's all about
Yeah,
timing. So it's like sometimes that timing is everything, and maybe getting time under your belt. Like people will say some, I've heard some stupid shit. One of the things that happens that pisses me off is like I've heard people say, "Oh, well, when you hit like 40 or you hit a certain age, you basically should just surrender. Like you should just give up.
right,
You're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to get your foot in the door because of age alone." Or
right,
I've heard that a lot, and I'm like, well, first off, like I know people that were exceptionally gifted when they were young, but they were too stupid to do anything with it, and they ended up sinking their own battleship. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So like, I think there's nothing wrong with anybody is, basically going into stuff at any age, as long as they have the passion and dedication to do it. Um, I think people use youth as an excuse sometimes, of like, oh, well, they're better quality or they're gonna have better product. I'm like, no, they're easily. I'll be honest with you, the younger you are, the more susceptible you are to like a lot of shit.
oh yeah, that's the truth too, especially with your peers, and whoever you're hanging out with at the time.
Oh yeah. And there's kind of like I know my friends that got in their 20s they were alcoholics.
Right,
I mean, or they were on in meth or God knows what drug. Pick one, right? And they had so much potential in whatever like different fields that they were in, whether that was art or they were doing music. They paid the price for it, and it was like they, of course, now they're older and they don't want anything to do with it because of that time. And I think it's sad because I'm like, timing is everything, and I believe in that. I think everything happens for a reason in that context, especially. And, it's like sometimes you never know and because there's so many platforms now to get yourself out there without having to go through a stupid agent.
right, right,
uh,
exactly. Yep.
or, PR company bullshit. I mean, it makes a world of difference. I mean, now you can get your own stuff out there without having to deal with middlemen and people telling you, well, maybe if you changed your style and mimic this person, we'll let you do this.
Right. Yep. And that was part of my hiatus was we had this thing called Napster that
Mm.
showed up and
Mm-hmm.
completely flipped the music industry on its head. And everything changed after that. And the pursuit of getting a signed contract wasn't as viable anymore because people were getting basically robbed for their music.
Yep.
So there was a creative stall that happened during that time, um, from everywhere, basically, because not only were artists getting ripped off, but new creators that wanted to pursue that lane were discouraged,
Yep.
just because of it, and myself included. It's just kind of like, what's the point? Why try to hunt down that elusive record deal when the record deal didn't mean shit anymore? And luckily nowadays, there's been enough time lapse where it's kind of balanced back out again,
Mm-hmm.
and you can finally support your favorite artist again, and there's so many different ways to do it. So luckily we've seen the shift back a little bit, and creative sources are finally starting to pop up here and there, but there sure is a lot of garbage. And to add to your point about the youth thing,
Mm-hmm.
that is unfortunately still prevalent. The As far as mainstream and record deals go,
Mhm.
especially in hip hop, they're really looking for a certain look. Great example is these tatted face rappers that kind of hit this mainstream lately.
Mhm.
It almost seemed like the more tattoos you had on your face, the more push you're gonna get. Great example is this kid named Little Xan,
Yeah.
spelled Xan. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but
Yep.
he had his little pop there for a minute. Just a different face that nobody had seen before, something different. And I remember his hit song that kind of broke him out, and it was okay. The production was done well, but at the same time, I could see that this kid had no real talent.
Mhm.
It was all about an image. And then I started digging into his backstory a little bit. Here he was giving legend rappers on a scale of 1 to 10. He gave Tupac a 2. And
What?
yeah, you can look it up. He caught a lot of heat for that, by the way. He was during an interview, and he's like, "I'll give Tupac a rating, 1 to 10," and he's all 2, and I'm like, "Whoa, whoops."
And the guy's like, "Are you sure?" But and he is like having to reconfirm. 10 is the best, one is crap.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was bad. It was bad. And I wasn't the biggest Tupac fan growing up, but I respected the man. I could tell he was an amazing poet. And if you don't recognize that about him,
Mhm.
you don't know music. And to watch people like that getting these mainstream pushes, it really corrupted my sense of thinking as far as what I wanted to do with my music, and that's ultimately why I decided to create my own style and kind of give what I wanted to hear. What I would want to hear, I created basically, is what I'm saying,
Well,
instead
yeah.
of trying to copy what was mainstream.
And I think that that direction is the smartest direction. I mean, when I look at, let's just say, basic content, you know, um, the way that people are, let's say, just on YouTube, that is very much like, to me, it's a metaphor of life, is that you have a lot of people that are going to follow in one direction alone. And that's the only direction they're going to stay in. And that's where they're going to plateau. They're not going to move, they're going to stay in that place. And they keep each other stuck in that place as well because they can't allow someone to be above or any bigger than they are, so they push them below them.
Right.
So that's the danger of that. And that's just like it is whether it's in Hollywood or it's in the music industry in general or whatever job even. So it's in order to break out of any of these things, you have to stand out in your own way and you have to blaze your own trails. No one else is going to fucking do that. And that's the point of blazing your own trails and just keep doing what you're really good at doing.
Right.
And, humor is something I think, especially that we need. And
Yeah.
I mean, we're hitting a point where it's like the humor is just so dry and baseless and not really that funny. It's just awkwardness. I'm like, this isn't funny. This is just awkward.
Yeah. Yeah. But
So,
if you can make awkward funny, which
oh,
like
mm-hmm.
Dave Chappelle did recently,
Oh, yeah,
but you got to have a certain style to do that.
correct. Yeah, you can't really, like, I don't know. I made the unfortunate mistake of sitting down and watching a few millennial focused comedies, and they were terrible. The hum
Oh yeah, that.
It was bad. I was like, why did I do this? I thought maybe it was just kind of like a mercy kill, really. But I thought I would try and just see what it was, to see the humor. I could see some parts being funny, but the majority of it wasn't very funny, and they got terrible ratings. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
wonder why. Because the humor is not, they can't seem to grasp. And this is my opinion. I don't know what yours would be on this, but I don't think that the Hollywood industry has figured out what the hell to do with the internet aside from censoring it and trying to isolate it and take back revenue in a sense, like whether that's through YouTube or any other platform or streaming. But they're having a really difficult time trying to grasp the new audiences, where they're coming from because of so many squeaky wheels crying out and bullshit. Does that make sense? So,
Perfect sense. Yes.
I mean,
Uh,
what do
I,
you
I
think? I mean, I don't
Well, to
know.
add to that, to get, and I'm not trying to plug my show or anything, but
Plug
me and
away.
Kermit, yeah, well, me and Kermit, that was kind of our preface when we discussed what we were going to do with our Ribbit and Bigot show going forward. How did we want to approach it?
Mhm.
Now that we were taking it kind of serious. And I said, well, Kermit, I think our golden rule, so to speak, and of course he'd make a joke like golden shower, something funny. But I'd be like, we have to make fun of ourselves.
Yeah.
That is the most important thing we can do right now. If you can't make fun of yourself and literally, put yourself out there to get chopped up, and laugh at it and
Mhm.
literally laugh at it and not take offense to it, we will be on the cutting edge. And he agreed with me. And we were like, that's right, because that's what I'm seeing too much of now is, and Dave Chappelle touched on this a little bit, was you can't have taboo in comedy or else
Correct.
it's just not
Yep.
comedy anymore.
Absolutely.
You know, you start taking pieces away and there's no comedy left. There's nothing to laugh at because
Right.
this guy's going to get pissed or that girl's going to get, upset or this one's going to get offended. And,
Yep.
when you start pulling those kind of cards out, you're destroying what it was originally built on. And that was the fact of exposing stuff that's not talked about as much, that's a little taboo,
Mhm.
and bringing it into the light and making fun of it. And that way it makes everybody comfortable, relaxed. Hell yeah, I've been through something like that. But if you can't have an open mind to understand that,
Mhm.
then you're part of the problem. And I'm seeing that too much now, too much.
And it's so disappointing to me, like with the amount of comedies that have come out. There's very few of them that are funny. Because there's so many things that they can't bring up because it might offend someone. Well, the point of comedy is to make fun of things that are offensive, to make fun of things that are uncomfortable, to make them laughable. And that's a way of easing stress. So when you start taking away the ways to ease stress and to make people not so much comfortable with something, but able to realize why is it funny? Because it's fucking inappropriate. That's why. You know, it's not appropriate. Like that's the key term to humor. That is offensive. Yes, and it's hilarious because it's offensive
Exactly.
and everyone knows the joke is it's offensive. But when
Right.
you have people who are just not getting that, it's so frustrating and it's like some of my because I used to do improv and stuff and I loved it and I did a little bit of I didn't do a lot of stand up. I did it only a few times, like a handful, and I loved it. But
Yeah.
my jokes are fucking offensive.
Nah.
And I say really offensive shit and because it's true, but it's not
Exactly.
true. There's a bit of truth to it and that's why it's
Right.
offensive. And
It's
and
also why it's funny.
exactly. And it makes it, and that's why it was enjoyable, right? But then they take this shit away, and I'm like, now we have people who are like, you can't curse. It's offensive.
This is great. You gave me a flashback and a prime example of what we're talking about here. And there was a time period, you may remember it, where this doll came out that was uber popular called the Cabbage Patch doll.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, everybody had to have one. Even the boys were wanting one. It was so
Right.
popular. It was like the first crazy black market for Black Friday Christmas gift that everybody was killing each other for, type of
Yep.
thing. That doll started that craze. Um, and I remember when it came out, it was everybody's talking about it, so popular, blah blah blah. And then this parody account came out that started making these baseball trading cards. They were called
Garbage Pail
Garbage Pail
Kill. Yep.
Kids. I grew up with those, and my friends and me thought that was a nice cultural fu to this push of this Cabbage Patch Kid that was everywhere.
Oh yeah.
And so we started collecting them, and we loved them, and everybody had them, and and it blew up. It even got to a point where it made a really bad movie. But it got,
Yeah.
but the funny thing is to put it in retrospect, growing up, my mom and her generation looked at it as, that's repulsive, how disgusting. I
Mm-hmm.
even had some of them got torn up because they
Yep.
were so gross.
Yep.
And me as a kid at the time was, they're just funny. They're just funny. Yeah, they're gross, but they're funny. And it was a battle between me and my mother and stuff, and I had to hide them and everything. And so now
Yep.
growing up, and looking back at that time period and seeing that made me realize how crucial comedy is. And the
Oh
fact
yeah.
that you have to make fun of, the trends. You have to make fun of the stuff that's popular. Because if you don't, then, what are we living for? Just to get the next hot item? Everybody
Mm-hmm.
needs to laugh in life, or else, it's way too short not to laugh at it.
Oh
It's real
yeah.
comedic.
I mean,
that life is a joke in itself.
oh, it
It really is.
absolutely is. And it's like, humor is like one of those things that um, I go to. It's when I get pissed off, I will go into humor mode, which is not intentional. It's just because my brain is trying to cope, I guess, and I'm just saying shit that like I've thought and silently
Mhm.
and did not say anything at the time. So
Yeah,
like when I have these rants, which I've been, believe me, or I toned them down significantly to what I'm actually fucking thinking, but um, it's it's a bit of truth in there mixed in with the rant, and the humor is my way of adapting to it. So it's like um, with all the frustration that we have with how people act and how we can't say certain things because God forbid if we hurt feelings, and also what if we say something and they can bring it back and say, oh, you must be this or you must be that because you said this comment. It's a joke, people. you know we have a big fucking problem with these people don't understand that celebrities in general are jesters in the Coliseum. They are not
exactly.
the goddamn government. They are jesters. So that means the jesters just get confused. They think they're kings. That's the problem. They're not kings, they're jesters. And believe me, they're only one terrible joke away from being back in the gutter of which they came, like the rest of
Right.
us. But they're jesters. They're there to keep you entertained while the other people are doing their jobs, whatever the hell that is. You know? Um,
Yeah,
and I don't think people understand that these are just jokes and they're not vindictive. They're made to be funny because it's the uncomfortableness that makes it funny. It's the offensiveness to it. Like George Carlin wouldn't have a chance now. No
no,
chance.
no. He'd be eaten alive by the
Mhm.
SJWs at this point. Yeah,
And
definitely.
and it's like, you could see like a very like I'm a huge Don Rickles fan. I love Don Rickles. I always have. And I love his roasts of people and how offensive he is and his timing, right? Because
Yeah.
it's amazing. But you can see slowly on talk shows or his live shows over time people like gasping in an audience because he said something racist, and then he'd be like, he'd turn on him. He'd be like, "Oh, you're offended, poor you." Like he would make fun of them for being offended about a joke,
Yeah.
and I was like, brilliant. And
Yeah, no, I grew up on Johnny Carson,
mm,
Bill Murray, Chevy Chase were very inspirational comedians to me growing up.
mm-hmm,
And you can tell by my humor now that if you look at like Johnny Carson and Bill Murray, Chevy Chase, their dry humor and stuff,
mm-hmm,
I'm a lot like they are, as far as quick, jabs back and getting people.
mm-hmm.
I'd probably even have the comedic, uh, stats as far as when I do stuff with Jolly, where I'm making them. I got whoopee cushions, that I use on our show. He has a blowout, and I make sure to do it at a point when you're not expecting it, and
Right.
all of a sudden he just rips one, and the rest of the panel even pauses for a minute, and I go back and watch those moments in the show, and I laugh so hard because I could see the literal shock of not only the panel but the chat too, because the chat like starts putting emojis and laughing and yeah, so a good comedy punch can change everything in what you're trying to bring across.
I think it's interesting you brought up Johnny Carson because Johnny Carson was like a master of timing. He was
Mm-hmm.
so good at permitting the joke to land,
Yep.
and he was such a visual person too.
Yes.
Like his expressions, he says like I know it sounds silly, but I mean honestly, it's Carson's formula. He has the best timing. He is
Yep.
very expressive. I love it when he had the damn animals on there.
Oh yeah.
Um, because it was like you know, he just had it down. He knew how to
Yep.
interact. He knew how to let if he had comedians on or a guest on, he would let them land their joke. And if for whatever reason it landed a little off, he was so fast. He'd come in for the save, and he'd be able to save that conversation from going
Oh
down,
yeah.
shit town.
And
But
he did skits. He did his own skits, which
yes,
were comparable to like Saturday Night Live at the time.
yes, I think he was a very talented man, and it's underappreciated, big
Well, he's
time.
he's been lost in time a little bit because he's been gone
Mhm.
so long.
Yeah.
But that was my generation growing up. He was the man on late night TV, and so that's who I had to tune into to start learning my comedic chops as a child.
And I also think the other well, he's a singer and stuff, but I love Dean Martin, right?
Okay,
And
yeah,
I love watching him because he's just naturally. that way. He was himself, but he also
Right.
did put on a bit of an act. Obviously, he's not a blazing alcoholic. Um, but he knew his timing, and of course he'd do jabs. There's a great trying to remember if you should absolutely. I don't know if you've already seen it. The one where it has Dean Martin on there. He crashes Johnny Carson's show, and he has George Gobel, who's a comedian at the time, and he has Bob Hope there, and
Oh, nice.
you have to see this. But I'll send you the clip. It's worth every fucking minute. It is the
Okay, cool.
funniest. It is the funniest thing you've ever seen because Dean Martin
Nice.
just decides to crash the segment,
Yeah.
which pushes back George Gobel. And when George Gobel comes on, Dean proceeds to fuck with him unbeknownst to this guy. It's hilarious. And
Yes.
it's gold. And honestly, that's some golden television because I like things that are unscripted but still hilarious. I like that.
Unexpected. Yes. Yes.
Unlike
Definitely.
the fake reality of reality television. We have so much shit that's scripted now. You're not allowed to be spontaneous. Everyone has to be scripted down to a point where that way there's no one offended. And I think that's what sucks. Um, because that's what I like about your show is it always feels natural. It always feels like it's natural humor and it's learning just to toss the ball back and forth,
Right.
and
And,
not
and we'll always give you a surprise. You can
right.
almost guarantee something crazy, something out of something you're not expecting should or will probably happen on the show. A great example is Kermit showing up with Miss Piggy's face cut off, or El Perro De Rovera comes in and sabotages the stream, or we've had a lot of different circumstances happen on the show itself just to throw the audience off, because we'd be literally having a conversation about Star Wars, and then all of a sudden something crazy happens. That's how
Mhm.
you connect. That's how you hook people in, and that's how you get them talking about you. One of my favorite moments after our first couple of shows we did, Drunk 3PO messaged me, and he's like in this chat with all these brothers. He does this show called Drunk and the Black Guys type show,
Mhm.
and so he's in this chat with all the brothers, and they're talking, and he comes back to me and he tells me, "Dude, everybody in that chat is talking about your show last night." And I go, "That's brilliant," because if people are still talking about it the day after, then you're onto something.
Right.
The last thing you want to do is have this repetitive, boring ass, oh, same people, same conversation,
Mhm.
same old shit. And that's exactly what'll turn people off from you. And it's a hard reality, hard pill to swallow.
Mhm.
And a lot of people have yet to swallow it, unfortunately.
And it is tricky. I mean, it's like I said, I'm putting together the my late night one, my late night in the nut house thing, the nightfall in the nut house rather. And it's still I'm trying to find the right formula, and
Yep.
trying to figure it out, and trying to change things up, and also just kind of like it's trying to figure out the right formula, bringing new people on, and rotating out new ones, and bringing people on maybe that never been on a stream or but I've talked to them. It's not like just some
Yeah.
random person. But
Well, mix it up. You got to mix it up.
right.
The great point about the Muppet Show. I'm going to give a reference here. It's funny. The Muppet Show back when it was in its prime, their main thing was bringing on a guest star for every episode, a
Mhm.
different guest star, and that show blew up because of it. You had your normal cast every week,
Right.
but you had somebody different that would incorporate whatever they were doing into your show, and that's kind of the formula that we took with ours. And so every week we have somebody different on, and we incorporate them in our jokes and whatever. And if they have something to contribute, great. It's even better.
Mhm. I think it's like I like that kind of formula. I think generally too there's trying to break out of the echo chambers too is especially great because there's so much. Like I hit a point where I was like, fuck the MCU. Like I'm to that point. I don't want to talk about it. I don't give a shit. I'm a fan of Marvel, but I am not a fan of the movies. That's just the way it
Right.
is. So I get bored with that, and I'm like, okay, we bitched about Star Wars again. I'm done.
Mhm.
Like I feel like I've filtered that out now. Like I'm done. But those things get boring. Pop culture can sometimes get very boring because it's just the
Yes.
same shit over and over again. So it's nice to be able to talk about everything else. I know, like some people on their streams, they don't want to talk about politics or any of that shit, which I understand. Sometimes you don't want to. I don't care. I find it all interesting. I'm willing to listen to everybody, no matter if they're liberal or, I'm a political atheist. Fuck everybody. So,
Right.
in the end, if is the I'm just saying this, we're gonna have some of the best material ever in the next fucking year. It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be
Looking forward
so.
to it.
It's gonna be fantastic. But yeah, I mean, I like the way their format is on the show, and like I think what I like most is that it's a natural flow, and you guys are bouncing the ball back and forth. Everybody's having fun. There's no, you know what I mean, like drama and bullshit and dead air. I don't think I've
Yeah, dead
ever
air
heard.
is bad. And
I.
then, of course, a hostile takeover is the worst too. Somebody that just won't shut up.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a few of those out there that are horrible about that, and we'll purposely not bring them on the show because of it, because we know what we're gonna get. It's like, nah, they just don't mix well with what we're trying to do.
Well, it's like, yeah, it's not your show. You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
but yeah,
There's a
it's
certain chemistry you have to uphold. It's a comedy show. So if
right,
I don't sense that comedy chops from you, it's like, why would I put you on the show, man? And we could stream together and have a conversation,
right.
and do something else. But and I have people that literally kind of shot down where I'm like, yeah, you're a friend of mine, you're cool, but I'm just not feeling you for the show, man. It's nothing personal. Come up with a gimmick or something. Maybe we can talk. You know what I
Right.
mean?
And there's a chemistry
Yeah.
part that's very important. I think it's like uh, I've been on streams before where the chemistry was great, but then if you bring in, all it takes is one bad decision, and let's say you have this one bad decision that won't either shut up or go away. That one bad decision can absolutely ruin the chemistry of an entire
Mhm.
panel, and it sucks. And
Yeah.
it's happened on many streams I've watched. I'm like, oh, what happened?
Yeah.
And it's rough because you always have to have that consistent chemistry between at least say the primary players on the show, so that way it stays consistent. Otherwise, people get bored. They're like, this person's gonna be on oh shit. Yeah,
It has to stay consistent, but it has to stay intriguing as well. And
absolutely.
like I
Yeah.
said, the most important part is you want people talking about it. You want people the next day going, man, did you catch that stream last night because of whatever. So if you're not bringing something different, bringing something intriguing, tantalizing, you're gonna fall by the wayside. I'm picturing a lot of crashed channels. I'm already starting to see it a little bit, to be honest,
Mhm.
where these
Mhm.
channels are really going to start falling off, especially after episode 9 comes and goes.
Mhm.
The Mandalorian came out. I, for one, am a fan. I support it now because I think it's a great show. I didn't buy Disney Plus because of it, but I
Mhm.
do support the show. I support the people that are creating it. Um, and it's finally something that for me personally as a Star Wars fan, where I can sit down and be like, okay, I can enjoy this. So far so good type of thing. I'm not gonna jump on the hate train right now just
Right.
because I'm so pissed off about the last thing they put out. Doesn't mean that I can't give it a chance. And
Right.
if you stay in that mentality of that I hate this and hate that and I can never give you forgiveness type of thing, well then you just ain't living, man. That means you're
Mhm.
stuck in your negative world of your little bubble. And if you live in there for too long, the negativity is going to seep into your very soul, and
Mhm.
you're going to become a negative person. And if anybody disagrees with you, you're going to instantly be negative and bark back obsessively and with just sheer nastiness. And you don't see it, and your loyal, hardcore people, with you don't see it,
Mhm.
but all those other people that were, just kind of standby, cool, whatever type peeps are going to see that type of emotion coming out of you, whether it's Twitter or your videos or whatever it is, and they're gonna sense that and
Right.
sense that negativity, and it's a channel killer. It really is. And I think we're going to go through a cultural change here pretty soon. There's been a jump on this bandwagon of entertainment right now, and I get it, but entertainment understands it still needs to make money, so it's going to change.
Yeah.
And we've kind of put our foot down. They've noticed there's certain things that are starting to change now, like the new Sonic movie got changed recently. uh,
Mhm. Oh
you
yeah.
know
Now, the Star Wars Episode 9 has obviously been changed several times through the process. And, it's not going to hit. It's not going to be the greatest Star Wars movie ever. We all know this.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do know for sure, and it's going to devastate some people, but this is the hard, hard truth I keep slapping in people's face. It's not going to be as bad as The Last Jedi. That's impossible. So
It's
you have
true.
to accept
It's
that.
true because that Last Jedi was, oh my God. I will say this, myself, I am not buying this ticket. The son is buying the ticket because this is our thing, but he's insistent we go because last time we were in the theater, my reactions were out loud, and I couldn't shut up. And because we were the Last Jedi, I was just like, "What the fuck is this?" Like it,
Right.
and like because he knows I'm gonna say something. Because we were in the theater and there was just so many like with flying Leia. That did it for me. That's where
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't
Yeah.
help it. It came right out. I was like, "What the fuck?" And it was,
Yep.
and I wasn't the only person because people were laughing and booing at that scene. Um, because it was just so asinine. But that's why he's dragging me because he knows I'm going to say shit. And he's like, "I'm going to record you." I'm like, "Do not put me on video." So,
Right.
but yeah, he's hoping, and I have some optimism. If it is great, great, that's awesome. But if
Sure.
I'm
Yeah.
not
Fat
going,
chance, sure.
I'm not going to go in like I did with the Last Jedi with high expectations. That's all.
Right. Well, J.J. Abrams was handed literally a big pile of shit.
Oh yeah.
And you can only do so much with a pile of shit. You can sculpt it into the most amazing sculpture, but it's still a pile of shit.
Yep.
So it's never going to be what we expect it to be
Right.
because of what was given. The characters, the storyline, everything is just shit.
Yep.
And so now going forward, it's this repair mode. You're in your final chapter of the movie. There's only so much time that you can use to repair without,
Mm-hmm.
staying focused on your story going forward. So all the balancing that needs to be done in this movie to try and, appeal everybody is never going to happen.
Right.
But what will happen is you'll have enough people that veer over to the side of, okay, that wasn't as bad. I guess I can get back on this bandwagon and see what you come up with next.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with The Mandalorian coming out and that having pretty positive reviews, you got your hardcores out there that are F Star Wars no matter what. I get it.
You're right.
I get it. But if you step outside of that hatred of what they've done, to your childhood or whatever, your issue is, and you look at each project individually, there is moves being made towards making the fans happy again, and I'm seeing it. A great example is with The Mandalorian. They physically brought George Lucas back on the set
Mm-hmm.
and had him oversee scenes and stuff and help with characterization and development. And what else do you people want?
Right.
How much more can you ask for than that
Yeah.
besides him literally stepping into the director's chair again? So,
Yeah, I
but
just
that,
got the trial for Disney Plus because when I was here, I had a talk with LB. Like we were just talking, and I said he likes it. You know what I mean? He enjoyed The
yeah,
Mandalorian, and I said, well, tell me, honestly, aside from what you've already told me, I said, would you say that Disney Plus is like a benefit? Because I have kids, man, and I'm
yeah,
thinking, and he says honestly, he's like it's probably a good service to an extent. He goes, but it depends on what they're releasing once the novelty is over. Like what will be left, like
right,
what is going to be that new content aside from the Mandalorian, and the direct to video Lady and the Tramp crap. Um,
right.
there, what's going to be left, and he goes, but I think for now it's a good service. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I've been on there now 2 days just looking at they have a lot of movies on there. I have like irritations, but I just ignore it. But I will say like when you go onto like HBO, Showtime, or Stars, when you're doing streams there, and this is how I check quality because I'm an asshole. But when I'm watching a movie, I have a tendency to skip ahead to certain parts, especially if
Right.
I've already seen it, and it'll screw up the video on a lot of those other platforms, or it'll freeze on me, or it takes forever to load.
Oh,
And on Disney's so far, knock on wood, when I skip ahead, it's instant. Like I'm already at
oh,
that part. There is no delay. There's no streaming issue.
Oh, that's important.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, well, good to know. I mean, I thought that was I'll give him a kudo for that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I haven't sat down and watched The Mandalorian yet. That's one thing I'm kind of like, I was talking to the eldest. He wants to watch it with me, so we're gonna watch it together. But I think I'm willing to give it a chance. Now, do I think I'll go and stream this and pay every month? I don't know, because there's so much competition in the streaming in general. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Pretty bad.
Yeah,
Pretty bad.
I may
Well,
wait.
ridiculous.
I may wait for, like, let's say a month and then go back, and
Yeah.
then subscribe just so I can catch up on the Mandalorian releases, you know. But other than that, though, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out over time. But I do feel kind of like, Disney is just so, it leaves such a bad taste in my mouth right now that I'm
Sure.
not sure how the fuck I feel about it. You know what I mean? It's kind of a mixed thing. I'm sad that they made all these great movies and now they've turned into this like titan of hell.
Ah, yes, and that's the biggest point that you have to understand about what's happening as far as like the Phantom Menace is a great example, and how that group blew up. And from my perspective, it's kind of hit its top point. It's not going to get too much more blown up, I don't think, at this point.
Mhm.
But the Phantom Menace was, invented literally to combat what we couldn't stand about the new, Star Wars movies going forward. Um, and now that the voices have been heard, you know,
Mhm.
it's quite obvious. If you don't think so, you haven't been paying attention.
Right.
So when I have to look at each project individually now. I can't, I can't just judge it all on Disney, because
Right.
there's people involved that they're not Disney for life, but they may be really involved with Disney. So like a great example is Jon Favreau, who directs The Mandalorian. I can't find a person out there that didn't think Iron Man 1 was a brilliant movie. I mean, most people would agree that it was a great movie, put the first stepping stone towards the Marvel, universe. And that was that director that set up that vision. The guy's had pretty much home runs ever since.
Mhm.
Um, I can't think of anything after that he did that wasn't pretty damn good or brilliant. And now that he's in charge of this Mandalorian, Dave Filoni, I know some people are on the fence with him, or back and forth on that. But he's another one that's been with George for years and
Mhm.
knows the lore, knows the background. And then when I saw that picture, I have a picture saved in my phone, which I'm probably going to use in a thumbnail at some point.
Mhm.
But there's a picture of the three of them sitting on set. And now that I've watched the episode and then seen that picture and kind of embraced it, there's George down at the end of the three of them, and they're all just chilling, watching a scene together, and you can see the cohesion. You can see they're all on the same level. You can see they're all, liking what they're seeing, type of thing. Um, that gives me hope and makes me want to believe that we do have a future in Star Wars, hopefully someday. And if not, what were we fighting for this whole time?
Right. Right. And in the end, it's like you're asking for all these things to be met. Okay. Give it
Yeah,
the opportunity to try to fix this.
you gonna
Now,
be mad just to be mad?
right.
Eventually you gotta sacrifice that anger and be like, okay, what do you got? Did you fix it? Okay, cool. This looks good. Let's keep going this way.
Right.
The fans have spoken, type of deal. And I think they did speak. The Disney Plus network's blowing up from what I hear.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting just to see how it does go on, how it develops, if they're going to continue to follow the formula or if they're going to go off the rails again. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, they get a little too confident and go, "Okay, well we can do this stuff now." It's like, but like I've always
Money talk.
exactly. So it's like, is this going to develop? Is it going to get better? Is it going to go down the drain? That's completely up to Disney as to what direction they want to do. But in the end, they will notice it very quickly based on their subscriptions.
Right.
So this is actually a quicker way of giving them the feedback than prior, in my opinion.
And
Um,
you're getting a universal rage right now of people that have watched The Mandalorian and are like, why didn't we get this to begin with? This feel, this
right.
style.
Right.
Why wasn't this done to start it out? And so that may directly influence the turnout of episode 9.
Mhm.
And when we compare the two, and so it's going to be very interesting because the Mandalorian, I believe, plays right through the opening of episode 9. So I'm not saying they're
Oh.
connected or anything, but you're going to have two different styles there, two different prefaces of Star Wars vision going on.
Mhm.
And so there'll be a lot of comparison type things going on there. So we're in
It'll
for an interesting month next month.
it'll be one of those things where everything will start to kind of click. But I think by January they'll kind of determine, the outrage is going to be there. Like I do agree with you that we have seen in the plateauing with once episode 9. Right now, there's a lot of positioning right now to keep certain channels in out of the crash that's going to follow. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Once
Yep.
this nine episode crap is over, because all this outrage is short lived, and you can
Hmm.
only harness so much energy out of this because it's going in a certain direction. But also too, it's turning in some ways. It can turn toxic, like you were saying earlier about just toxicity eating people alive. You have to be very careful and very wary as to how you channel that rage and that anger about something, when I believe in most cases it isn't directly that issue. It's something larger and more personal for people.
Yeah, yeah. Well, pick your battles too. You got to pick your
Exactly.
battles. Yeah.
And don't go picking a fight and then crying about it either. I mean,
Right.
that's kind of what SGWs do, right?
Yep.
It
That's exactly what they do.
all day. And it's not worth battling with people about that shit because really life's a little too damn short for it. Like as far as my episode 9 feelings, it looks like shit to me, the trailers. I didn't see anything there that makes me want to go see it, but I'm being drugged um, to go
Right.
see it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, whatever, I'll let you know. Like the check's in the mail on it. But in the end, I mean, if it is a good
Yeah.
movie, I will definitely come back and say, okay, they tried to fix this. I can
Right.
see what they were trying to do. I'll give them the credit due. But if it's exactly, a shit sandwich because of the mess that's been left, I feel
Mhm.
terrible. I wish JJ honestly had kept going. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I had really hoped that, and I think he had taken too much on his plate at the same time
Right.
because he was doing Star Trek around the same time.
Yeah.
Oh God! And so that was really disappointing to me that I heard he wasn't going to be doing the next Star Wars. So I was like, "Who's this guy?" And yeah,
Oh boy. Yeah. Well, and of course, hindsight's 2020. There's nothing we can do about it now. The damage
right,
is done.
yeah,
Um, but like I said, there's our voices are being heard. There's been cries. I can remember when even before The Last Jedi came out, I had the pleasure of meeting Billy D. Williams. I went to a convention and got to meet him and had him, sign a couple things for me and gave him a high five and all that and Colt 45 and he confirmed to me that he was not pansexual. That he is in fact a heterosexual still, and loves the ladies. But yeah, I remember after I got the photo taken, I put a hashtag Bring Back Lando, and I started kind of pushing that. Right after the first movie, actually, I was because it was a few months before Last Jedi was coming out when I met him. Maybe even like almost a year.
hmm
So I had some time there to kind of push this whole bring back Lando thing. Why isn't Lando back? Especially after Han Solo dying. I was like, I want
yep,
some Lando, and here they are giving it to me. Will he have the greatest role in a movie? Probably not. The guy's 80. He's not going to be doing ninja flips. Um, but from what I could tell in the trailer, it looks like he has a pretty important role.
yeah,
Now, that said, will it be good? I don't know. Probably not. But um, they've given me the respect to say, hey, we heard you. Here's your Lando.
right.
Now hopefully he's not, porking C-3PO by the end of the movie. I don't know. I just want to. I'm glad they're at least trying, and hopefully, like I said, we know it's not going to be as bad as Last Jedi, but hopefully we can walk away from it as a wash. And just be like, all right, can we just move forward now? And
right.
uh, there's no sense to continuously hate and be
hmm
mad about something that you just can't change. So you got to fight your fight. I understand all that, but at the same time, remember what you're fighting for.
Right. hmm You know, yeah, I agree. I 100% agree with that. I wanted to start wrapping up a little bit. Time has flown a lot more than
Rapping.
yeah, it flew. Um, but at the end of each of the shows I do, I like because Stig suggested it. I'll always give Stig credit for this. Just doing the Inside This Actor Studio Pivo questionnaire. And I don't know if you've heard this before for others in the audience. At the end of the Inside Actor Studio, which is basically like 101s with actors, directors, and producers, even musicians, um, James Lipton, the host of the show, always asks them these 10 questions at the end of the show, and it's based on a French series by Bernard Pivot from Bouillon de Culture, which I'm shitty at French, Olay. But these 10 questions, though, are always asked, and it gives you a little perspective into our guest. So I'm going to ask you the first question, sir. What is your favorite word?
Oh boy. Word or phrase?
You know what? Word or phrase is fine. Pick a phrase or a word.
Right now, probably tuck and roll.
And
Um,
for those who don't know what that means for you, what does tuck and roll mean?
lots of things. Lots of things. It's evolved into its own entity. That one in gender checks really taken off. But tuck and roll was a funny phrase me and my sister said, and it's been around. Like I can remember it being in a movie and stuff. But there's a snail movie, animated movie that came out where they said it. But me and my sister were talking about throwing somebody out of the car one day, doing 60 down the highway because you just got, touching your radio or something.
Tuck and roll.
And yeah, when they hit the ground, tuck and roll, right? Well, later on, I incorporated that saying as literally as a song, because we laughed so hard at that saying when we said it and that in that moment. And I actually brought, this is my other sister, not Meg's. I call her the Snow Sis, and she lives up in Seattle. But I brought her in, and she actually helped do the chorus of the song, and it's blown up a little bit. Kermit even used it on his PMS show. So tuck and roll.
It's awesome. Now, what is your least favorite word?
Mm.
It's a hard one.
Least favorite word, probably depression.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Oh, lots of things. Being
Mm-hmm.
an artist, some of the weirdest stuff can inspire you. Musically, a hot new track will inspire me, especially a
Mm-hmm.
really sick, a beat that I really love. It'll inspire me to write, make lyrics. Art inspirations come from, God, it's so random with art because it's been there with me my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be anything. Like more recently, like I was really into drawing, pencil, graphite. But more recently, I fell into love with rattle cans and kind of graffiti type art.
Oh.
But
Mm-hmm.
then these outer space paintings, you can actually check it out. I do a song called hashtag Fuck a Mumble Rap, and pretty funny song. You probably like the lyrics in that one. But there's the whole video is me doing a mural painting with rattle cans and like fast forward, at high speed. So it's pretty cool. You can watch it evolve as I'm doing it and while you're listening to the song. And I got pretty good at doing these solar system paintings and planets and stars and stuff and mountain ranges. All with the rattle can, just spray cans.
That's
And
cool.
it's whatever I get into at the time. Yeah,
I
who knows
actually
what'll be next.
watched that video of you doing this spray, doing the
Okay, yeah,
planets. I did watch that a while. It was a while ago. I watched that actually, but I thought it was cool. I like that whole idea of using, like especially when you watch the speed artists doing it, you know.
yeah,
And I was like, this is very similar. This is pretty much what I've watched before, but it's usually guys like on the street doing it.
right. Yep,
Yeah, I dig
same
that.
thing.
Exactly the
Yeah,
same thing. I would check that video out to anybody who's listening. I liked it. I like the whole idea of having the music going and then watching you doing your art.
right.
It's very
Yeah,
actually
and it
pretty
brings a
chill.
message at the end and everything. That's really cool. It kind of follows along with the lyrics to what I'm talking about and stuff. So yeah,
And I
Nice.
love being able to showcase two art forms at once. Yeah,
Yes.
that's why I love that video so much, because it's not only, the rap, which is all me, and the music, it's also the art. Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of like that. There's one particular artist sticks out, but it was a gentleman like he used to do the splatter art paint, and he would do portraits, and it was speed.
Cool.
He was doing it by speed and music. So he'd do like Janis Joplin or Jim Morrison or whatever, and he'd be doing a portrait of them, but he would paint them in a certain way, and you wouldn't be able to tell for a long time what it was. But he'd be spinning his board around, slamming paint on there like nothing. It
It's
was
awesome.
awesome. Yeah, it was pretty moving, and I like music with art. I think it's a performance thing too. It really is. Okay, what turns you off?
Uh, a lot of things. Let's see. Like, turns me off, as far as entertainment, or turns me off as far as like sexual
Anything.
preference.
It says turns you off in general, so that can be things that piss you off, that turns you off, or whatever pops into the head of what would turn you off in life, in general, maybe.
Negativity is a big one, especially an overabundance of it. Being a person with, depression in the family, and an active, I understand that I have the condition, but I've also learned throughout my years to combat it,
Mhm.
and to try and stay out of it as much as I can. It still comes. I have waves, and it's part of the fun of being a highly creative person. I think we have highs and lows.
Mhm.
A very roller coaster life, so to speak. And I've noticed, with age, that when you surround yourself with negativity a lot, it'll influence you and create, negativity inside yourself,
Yeah.
and start pushing you down, whatever path that is. And it's usually not a good one. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's probably my biggest turnoff, is just negativity.
Mhm. I agree. I think it's like how I've handled the negativity. It's like if I feel like I have too much of it, I have to just vent and get rid of it. Like I feel
Right.
like the monologue thing I started on the show is to get rid of it. So it's kind of like getting it out there, getting it away from me, and giving it back to whoever gave it to me. In that way, they
Oh
can
yeah.
take it back. I don't want it. And that way, it's
Have a
on the
karma
record.
sandwich.
Exactly. I just after like I had like this big rant last weekend, and I had been holding on to it for a while, and I just let it go, and I was like, next morning I was like, I feel so much better.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it did, and sometimes that's how I handle negativity as far as like when it
Yeah.
piles up. It's kind of like dirty laundry. And
Yeah.
just
No, I agree. Same thing with me. When something's bothering me that much, I have
mhm,
to get it out there. I
mhm.
have to get it out there. Yep.
Everyone has their ways, and art for you is a great tool. Whether that's
Yes.
music or physical art. I think those things, whether that's music or physical art, I think those things make a difference.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
it's a yeah. I go to writing. Writing is my vice. That's where I go. I can go away for a while, work on imaginary people, fix things.
Right. I love making a song, where the lyrics have, maybe even a little bit of hitting meaning in there, that
Mhm.
maybe a eye catch, or a few significant others
Mhm.
might catch it. Um, but I got it out there, and it's
Right.
it's in people's ears, and so that's very humbling once that happens. You can reset after that. It's
Yeah,
nice.
exactly. It's hitting the reset button. But yeah, negativity, it's like the best way to get rid of it is finding that either, I guess, a vent to get rid of that. Otherwise, it starts to smell. It starts to leave a stench in
Oh
your
yeah,
life. What is your favorite curse word?
bitch.
I don't know how many times I've heard you say it as jolly. Oh, it's the way you say it, too. That's funny. Oh, God.
Oh yeah, I've got a few different ways of saying it. Big Too Short fan growing up. One of his albums is called "What's My Favorite Word," and it's bitch. So yeah, I'm in cahoots with Too Short on that one. Favorite word.
I, I I support that. um, what sound or noise do you love?
Uh, well, that can fall in a couple different categories. when I if you're talking about like soothing, and I want to relax,
Yeah.
and if it's that kind of sound that I love, then it's nothing's probably soothes me more than hanging out by a riverbank. I don't know if you've ever enjoyed that, but
Mm-hmm.
just the silence of the crashing of the water going by you and stuff, or the beach, the
Mm-hmm.
waves. As long as you're alone,
Mm-hmm.
um, those are some awesome sounds. But my favorite sound out of anything, even better than moans from a hot girl giving her the goods. This is my favorite sound of all time, and that is the raw emotion that comes from a crowd when you deliver your song to them that they want to hear or whatever, and the vibe that you get from them, whether it's the cheering, the singing along. um, Something about that is the highest of highs. That alone was probably what pushed me to pursue music for so long,
Mm-hmm.
was the feedback feeling of a crowd digging your vibe and vibing with you. It's a connection like no other.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and boy, if you ever have a chance to experience something like that, stage fright is one thing. You get a stage fright feeling. I still get it, even
Yeah.
after I've done probably 100 plus performances, it's still there. Yeah, but the excitement of it when you finally break out and do your thing and catch the reciprocation of it is so amazing. And it's just a when you drop that mic and your song's over and the roar comes up and everybody's woo,
Oh yeah.
that sound is just, it's orgasmic, literally.
It's that energy exchange, really.
Yeah.
It's a perfect energy exchange because it's just like when you are telling a joke or a story and it lands the way you want it to land and getting that reaction, it's like perfect. That's what I wanted. That's that. It's just so much confirmation and it's like that. It's a great exchange. That's the best exchange, especially when people elaborate even. Like when you're telling a
Mhm.
story and they elaborate. You're like, "Yeah, man, we're on the same fucking level."
Oh
You
yeah,
know, those that's that feeling of exchange that I love that. I think it's always the best thing in the world. But yes,
it's a great feeling. Yep.
so, what sound or noise do you hate? And that could be any noise
Mm.
or sound.
uh I've met some real annoying women in my life that had just a certain tone of voice that
Mm.
can just really get under my skin.
Mhm.
And it may not even be, a sinister thing that they're doing. It's just the tone and how they're talking. Like I don't consider myself, stupid by any means. I actually consider myself, fairly intelligent. I'm not Einstein or anything, but I'm an avid reader, and I'm a lyricist, so I've got a lot of world knowledge and stuff, been around the block, and when I hear just stupid people talk, oh God, it's painful sometimes,
Mhm.
just especially when you can just tell that they're flapping at the gums and there's nothing behind it.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, so the combo of the two, a real cringy, high, scratchy, yicky voice and obliviousness and just
Mhm.
retarded.
Oh yeah.
It's a great
Mhm.
combo that should really get me going. Yeah, for sure.
Yep. I agree with that. Absolutely. Totally agree with it. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
That I haven't tried already. Getting
Uh,
low. I've tried them all up already. Let's see. Well, I did the rap star thing. That was pretty
so
cool.
your current profession, like whatever you're doing currently right now, what would you like to attempt? So that could be something you've already attempted, but just
Mm.
you're not doing it right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, God, I'd love to go back to, full time performing and stuff. I don't know if that'll ever happen for me. I had a I had a small pop, with my music. I had a Seahawks song that went kind of viral. It got on the radio and a couple of news programs locally in Washington State. Gained some traction. I've definitely had, a lot of attention at a certain point where I knew, if it would have kept going, snowballed, it probably would have been a fun profession to
Mhm.
continue to do.
Right.
Uh, but there was a time in my life where, when I was younger, I thought I wanted to be a paleontologist,
Oh.
and I really wanted to. So now I have all this crazy, useless information about the Mesozoic era and dinosaurs and stuff.
Mm.
So I have all this useless knowledge stuffed in my head from all these years of reading books that I thought that was going to be my career, and I never pursued it.
So you're saying
Uh,
you were like a walking natural history museum.
well, not to a certain era, that's the
Oh,
Mesozoic.
the
So
specialist, yeah.
yeah, I'm well known. I know my Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods very well.
Mhm.
The dinosaur realm, the years that they ran shit, and they call it Jurassic Park, in which the reason they do that is because Jurassic is the middle. That's
Yeah.
the middle time zone when they were at their peak, and then Cretaceous is obviously when it started veering off the other way. Although they were still at their peak until that meteor hit, that's when it
Mhm.
changed. Um, but yeah, I always thought, man, what would have been like to go out in the world and dig up dinosaur bones? I still think about that sometimes and how fun that would have been.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's that excitement too. It's a form of adventure, you know.
Yeah.
It,
Yep.
that's the creative mind too. We always have to have something adventurous going on. That's really what creativity is. It's just constant adventure.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
So,
Diving into something new.
exactly. Now, what profession would you not like to do ever?
Prostitution for geriatrics.
Oh my god. There was this lady, this is not PC, but there's this job in Japan where like these, for like invalids and stuff who can't leave their home, there's like women
Yeah.
and men that go and like take care of their business.
No.
Yeah,
No.
not like sexually, but like they,
Oh.
you know,
Well.
hand
Yeah.
jobs and all that.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah. No.
That's not a
No.
job. Yeah.
No. Couldn't do it. Couldn't do it.
No.
No. No. Couldn't do it. That's just one where I draw the line. Anything working in shit, like
Mhm.
plumbers. I've never envied a plumber.
Oh yeah.
Even though I do work in construction, like that's my bread and butter. I'm a painter by trade. I've
Mm.
been doing it 20 plus years. It appeals to my artist side.
Mhm.
Um, I've even done faux finishes and stuff like that, but um, the more artistic side of painting. But yeah, anything with shit, garbage, gross, nasty smells, I'm just not down with.
Yeah.
Um, I cannot stand the service industry. People bitching at you about food is another thing, and
Yeah.
stealing food all day. Ugh.
Going
So
home
yeah,
and smelling like food. That is like the worst feeling in the
yeah,
world.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, this is the last question. So, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Hmm. If I died like today,
Yeah, and what would you like God to say to you if there is
because I
such?
don't, that's an interesting question of perspective because, things change. If I live
Mm-hmm.
another 20, 30 years, who knows what could happen in that time that could change my perspective on that. So if I drop dead tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
I would want him to say, you know what, Sno Dub, you did enough where your name will be remembered.
Hmm. That's a good thing. It's I think one of the things that we look at as legacy above all things, especially when we look at our kids. Like what legacy are we gonna give them, even if it's just memory, right?
Right.
And when you look back on things, I get sad. You ever thought like, I know this is a little dark, but have you ever like thought when you're going by a cemetery how many of these poor souls like have no legacies, meaning they don't have children, they didn't have children, whatever that is, or better yet, they just didn't really do much because their lives were cut short or something. And you look at it and go, "There's so if it wasn't for this tombstone, we wouldn't know.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't know their name."
Mm.
It's a sad thing. I've thought about it before because I used to volunteer and help clean what do you call it, different cemeteries a long time ago, just cleaning tombstones and for veterans and stuff. And a lot of them didn't have family, and I always thought, God, that's sad. And to be in a sense forgotten is a very sad thing to me. You know,
Yeah, no,
Even
and
so go
sorry, go
ahead.
ahead.
Oh no, no,
Oh,
I was just yeah.
well, I was gonna say, purpose. Most
Yeah.
people in life are trying to find purpose.
Mhm.
Um, Without purpose, you have chaos. You don't have direction. You don't know what you're doing with your life, which unfortunately a lot of people endure. Great example is alcoholics, drug addicts
Mhm.
who have created a a different world around themselves because of the world they live in they didn't like. They had to alter it, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Um, Purpose is everything, and the longer I've lived, I got almost 42 years on this earth, and having a creative mindset, and you know being very awed and woed by people like Michelangelo and Leonardo and great artists like Van Gogh. These people that during their time, yeah, some of them had prowess, others didn't. Um, but after they've been dead and gone, this legacy has lived on.
Right.
And I finally realized that that was the true source of immortality, was
Mhm.
to make your mark on the world, whatever it is. And some people are very content with just bringing children into the world. That is a
Yeah.
mark,
Right.
and there's nothing wrong with that.
Mhm.
But there's other people that have to have more and have to have substantially that it was me who did this. Some of our most famous American presidents had that mentality.
Yeah.
Lincoln, great example. He had to make sure that he was known and what he did to change the course of history and all that. And so, like a great example is Michael Jackson.
Mhm.
The poor guy, went through the ringer towards the end of his career. I'm one of the guys that kind of believe it's BS.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm kind of pro Michael on that one. But I think over enough time, that part of his legacy will fade,
Yeah.
and the music will endure. And there will be 100 years from now where people will pick up a Michael Jackson song and still play it and be like, this is pretty good.
Yep.
It's music has evolved obviously since then, but this is interesting. And oh, I could see why so many people loved this at that time or whatever. And so when I made that Seahawks jam, which to this day is my most famous song, I realized that the lyrics are already dated because it was during a time when we had our Super Bowl run. And to this day, I have these dedicated hardcore Seahawk fans that ritualistically, big word, that try to or literally use my song as their pump themselves up type thing for the game.
Right.
I think that's great, and they're
Yeah.
passing it to their kids, and their kids are into it, and it's like a literal, a family thing where they're all getting together and they're dancing it out and getting ready for the game. And I'm thinking to myself, I drop dead tomorrow, that song's still playing. That song's still playing, and
Yep.
people are still listening to it, and still sharing it, and still, And for me, that's my purpose, and I'm so happy that I've found it in my life, at least part of it, or one source of it, at least.
Mhm.
And I feel sorry for anybody else that hasn't found some purpose. So,
Yeah.
um,
It's a greatest struggle for some people is to find that purpose, but aiming within your abilities and then working on those abilities if they're not to where you want them to be, to always have that ambition. Like it's okay to be ambitious and to have a little bit of fortitude at times when things are kind of rough and you're trying to figure out that purpose or intent, because intent is what's going to guide you towards it, you know. And I think that that's a big struggle for a lot of people at times with purpose, is finding their purpose but being not in fear. Like don't let the bastards grind you down, you know.
right.
Just keep pushing forward, and it's hard, believe me. I'm like i'm
Yeah.
I have been that person that's been like fuck these people,
Oh, yeah.
you
Yeah.
know but
Yeah. And the feeling in the situation today may not necessarily be the same one tomorrow. So you always got to remember that.
absolutely. I want to thank you so much though for coming on tonight and chilling and when talking about everything pretty much a little bit. But why don't you tell everybody where they can find you? Again, I'm going to have some pop ups come up here that show both your Twitter and your YouTube, but you're also on a couple other ones. So you're on, I do believe you're on Facebook. Isn't that right?
Yes. Yeah, I'm all over the place. The only one I don't indulge in that much is Instagram. Maybe I'll get into it more. I don't really like that preface out of all of them for some
Mm hmm.
reason. But yeah, you can find me at facebook.com/Sno Dub. Um, Also, on Twitter, it's at Sno_Dub. And then of course my YouTube channel, Sno Dub Music and Entertainment. And usually when you type in Sno Dub, and even in Google, I'll
Mm-hmm.
pop up. There
Yep.
ain't too many Sno Dubs out there. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Cool. Yeah, I like when I earlier I was looking to grab screen caps, and when I went to Google just for the hell of it, yeah, you came up like top. So I was like, oh, here he is. Never mind. Like, 'cause
Yep.
I was like, because I was gonna go to YouTube, and then I ended up going to Google by accident. I was like, I'll just Google him, and it came up everything, all your links. So, very easy to find Snow Dub's channel. You can find him on Twitter as well. He always posting goodies on there. Also, there's streams that he does with Kermit. You guys have a stream coming up on Saturday, um, the Ribbit and Bigot show. Um,
Ribbit,
and
Bigot, and Blonde now. Yeah.
yes, and the
We're
blonde.
changing it.
I'm like, I knew it wasn't gonna be Meg's, was the blonde. Um, but yeah, you can find them on Saturday nights. They're on my stream's on late. Well, technically it's the same time, but it doesn't matter because like their show is been there before, and I personally I like going. I like we get your guys' crowd after everybody's done on there, and they'll pop in, and I'll see
Oh
Kermit
yeah.
pop in and stuff. So I don't care. It's at the beginning of our show. It's usually just making because people are slowly trickling in if they are running late
Oh
and
yeah. Yeah.
stuff like
We don't
that.
have a set time. We tend to try to keep to Saturday nights, but we don't
Yeah.
really necessarily have a set time because whoever our guest is for the night, sometimes it's East Coast and they need to come on a little earlier.
Oh. Mhm.
So it varies. Some nights we're on at 8, other nights we're on at 10.
That's what I
It just
thought. I
depends.
was like, oh
Yeah.
shit, the time is so close. And I'm like, I thought it was earlier, but that makes sense now. Because I knew you guys did Saturday night for sure, but I just didn't remember the time. And I feel like I've hit a new point in my age where I'm starting to forget time. So I have to put stuff down. It's great. It's awesome. Love it. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming, Snow Dub, and please
Oh, yeah, it's fun.
check out his channel. I'll have all his links here, and you'll see little pop-ups like I mentioned before. Um, and you can check out his content. And him and Kermit do their show Saturday night. They always have somebody new. It's always a lot of fun, and I highly recommend checking it out. I know a lot of people that love it, and I do too. It's humor, and it does have that talk show quality to it, like we talked about a little bit earlier. But it's so different than the norm, and it's a
That's
nice.
what we try to do. Yeah.
It's like structured, but it's not because it feels very improv. So that's what I
Structured,
like.
structured chaos.
Perfect. Exactly. So anyway, thank you so much to everybody who's tuned in, and everyone have a good afternoon or evening or wherever you are.
Smash that like button and tuck and roll.